How are you, Usman?
Yeah, I'm good. What about you?
Yeah, I'm also good. Can you please tell me first about your experience, your background, so I can know about your experience, especially in Next.js?
Okay, so I start my career in 2019 when I start working in React.js. Then I moved to the Next.js and similar with the Stack. But if I will tell you specific about the Next.js, then I'm working on the Next.js front end for 2019 and 20 and 21 in Dexter's. That I joined the Discord solution, and I also worked there for with the SSR and also from the backend side with the MongoDB and SQL. And then I joined another company which name is Hash System. And after that, I'm here with you for interview.
Okay. Uh, okay, I will ask some question about the Next.js like as a full stack development. So, are you ready for this one?
I think your internet is not stable. Can you please do something for this?
Mm, yeah, I guess it's fine now. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm asking like, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I think there is some internet issue from your side.
Uh, no, I guess it's fine right now.
Okay, okay.
Okay, I was
So,
saying like
what you're talking about?
let's start from the Next.js. I will ask some question about Next.js.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, my first question is about like, can you explain the difference between the server side rendering, static side rendering, and the client side rendering, and when when would you use in Next.js?
Okay, so if I will talk about the next years, then there is three things like SSR, SSC, and CSR, as you know. And for the SSR, means server side rendering, it's working on each request. Means that when we will go on the Chrome, then we will hit any page, then on the runtime they will render a page and then send a request and then show the UI to us. But if you will talk about the SST, like it's building on generating time. Like for example, when we are in code and we create a build, then we can deploy on. I'm giving you an example, by the way. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. When I complete our when we will start the project, then a runtime the build will be created, and that build will run on the Chrome, and this is called the static generation. But if we will talk about the CSR, then it's client browser. This will be used then for the rendering. So that's why it's called CSR. And in simply React, if we will talk about, then it's using a CSR model.
Okay, fine. Like you are saying in static side generation, we just handle the build on runtime, right?
Hello.
Yeah, are you getting my point? I am asking like you are saying on static side generation, we use for the like build time, like when we run the build and it will run on the build time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, fine. So my next question is, how does Next.js routing work, and explain the difference between page, app route, and dynamic routing in Next.js.
Okay. So our next year's routing in dealing with two types of routing. One is called the app routing and one is called the page routing. You are calling you are asking about these things, right?
Yeah, I'm asking about three things. Like one is app routing, one is page routing, and one can be a dynamic routing. Can you explain the difference between them?
Okay, so if we will talk about the app routing, so first of all, there is some difference between some folder structure. Like if we will talk about the app routing, then the folder structure is like we can create a folder, then we can create a file in this. Like we create a folder like page, sorry, app, and then we will create a file page.js, and that will be our route. Like if we will talk about the we need to create about URL, then we will create a folder about, then page.js. We need to create the blog, then page.js blog. So this kind of routing are working in the folder structure. If I am talking about, then this will work like this. But if we will talk about the features, then it's definitely all the components are server components, but it's not in the page. If we will talk about the page routing, then all the components are not the server component, but we can make the client and server components by writing the use client at the top of the file.
Uh, okay, can you explain about any case or scenario you have worked with the dynamic routing, app routing, and the page routing, and how you like use them?
Yeah, I deal the many cases. For example, if I am using the page routing, for example, then I am creating a component. Then I'm using some. We are working on the server side. Then definitely there is some blocker to use the use state and the use effect, these kind of things. But when we will write the use client or use static, then definitely we can easily use effect and use state and these things in our pages. So this is the state where I need to use the page and app routing.
Okay, so my next question is about how would you optimize performance for the Next.js app with heavy image and lot of API calls?
If we will talk about the image optimization, then in Next.js there is a by default image access where you can render the images fast and easy to access.
Okay, and how we can manage a lot of calls in Next.js API?
Um, a lot of calls means, what do you mean by a lot of calls?
Like if we want to call a lot of APIs in Next.js, then how we can optimize the performance of the application?
Um, Basically, if we have so many APIs and we need all the API call. First of all, I'm repeating a scenario. We have a project. We have, for example, 10 APIs, and we are rendering we are calling all the 10 APIs. Then how we will optimize this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
This is the scenario, right?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, what I will do, I will use a third party, a library like Redux or Redux Thunk, where we can integrate our applications and we can store the data. So we don't need to recall the API again and again. We can just use that data from the Redux and we can use this.
Okay. But in this case, do you think we can use the increment static regeneration in Next.js, like ISR? Are you getting what I'm saying?
ISR for?
I'm saying like, do you think we can use?
ISR for?
Yeah, ISR.
Oh, no, I don't. Basically, you are talking about incremental static generation, right?
Yeah.
So it is, as I mentioned the last time about the SST, it's the same thing regarding to the SSH, where you can automatically fetch the data and you can use that.
Okay. And how like React.js perform in this case, like code splitting, it will handle by default when we have a lot of API call and need to optimize the performance of the application.
If I will talk about the by default behavior of the Next.js, then Next.js by default giving us some a little folder structure, not the complete folder structure, just a page folder and one or two files. Only by default behavior in Next.js, we are getting only these things. But if we are talking about the proper management, then we are creating some component. And if we have, for example, a dashboard page, so we are not writing the complete code in the dashboard, and for example 1000 lines for the dashboard page, we will split the code by ourselves like 200 lines a component, and we will use reusable components for this. For these things we can make it more efficient.
Yeah, you are saying right, but we can also utilize some other way. For example, we can utilize inside this one server side caching, in which we can use ISR, as well as we can do lazy loading in Next.js for optimize the performance, and we can also utilize CD and edge cases, edge function. For example, in Next.js we can write a edge function as well, uh, which will provide us the benefit to optimize the application. Okay, that's fine. Okay,
Yeah,
let's.
you are exactly right for this. But right now, I am giving you the answer for just for the code optimization. But if we will go for the performance optimization, then definitely you are right. All these things we will use.
Okay, let's move on the next question. How would you set up API route in Next.js application? And can you explain you would handle server side logic and data fetching within this API route?
Okay, so if I will talk about the API routes, then by default, Next.js giving us the a route with the hello world from the API, and we can follow the structure as by default structure. And what we will create some folders and all these stuff for the API creation. But sorry, what was your next question?
The next question is about like how you will handle server side logic and data fetching within this API's route.
Uh, Data fetching, basically you are talking about when we are calling the API and getting the data.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if we are going to be the data fetching, then definitely again we will use a Redux tool where we can fetch the data, we can store the data, and we can reuse the data on multiple places. For example, I have three pages, I need the data on three pages, then definitely I will not go on three pages and recall the API again and again. I will fetch the data one time, then I will use that data on three places.
Okay.
So that's the method how I will fetch the data.
Okay, the next question is about like how would you handle database interaction, and what are the some best practice for ensuring data security and performance in Next.js?
Just a second, please. Just a second. I am getting a call. Just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, oh yeah, sorry. So your voice was cut down. Can you please repeat?
I'm saying like in Next.js, how would you handle database interaction, and what are the some best practices for ensuring data security and performance?
In Next.js, if we will talk about the data security and your second point was.
Database interaction, like how Next.js will interact with the database.
Okay, so for the interaction, we can use a DB, like we can use our required DB, like we can use MongoDB, we can use SQL for that, and for the data interaction, and we can handle all these things by just by some queries. And if we will talk about the security, then we can use some environments variables in this, and we can use some JWT. We can use JWT for this. We can use rate limiting, and the basic things was password hash like decrypt, and yeah, these things we can use. And yeah, this is in my mind right now.
Okay, okay, fine. And the next question is about like How do you handle API integration and data fetching in Next.js, especially when we are dealing with the third-party APIs? And what strategy you use to ensure efficiency and reliability? Like when we call some API from the third party, not from the Next.js app. Yeah.
So, can you please elaborate that which kind of third-party API calls?
It can be any, for example, when we are dealing with the Stripe payment method, it's also a third party. Then how we will tackle this one in Next.js?
Okay, so basically, as you mentioned about the Stripe, then we can use the third-party API call within we can use within our controller. We will write a controller. For example, we can we have a API from the third party with the method of get. Simply, I will use this API in our Next.js API, and we can get the data from that.
Okay. And do you know about the GraphQL in Next.js?
Yes.
Yeah, can you explain?
For example, I have a large data set. Then we need, for example, I have a table. I will give you an example. For example, I have a table which have almost 50 fields. Then I need to implement a get method for that table. So definitely, when I simply run the query, then I will get almost 50 rows, 50 columns, or something, some kind of data, right?
Yeah, right.
I need only first name and the last name or the email. So if for these three things, I need to call the whole database and I'm getting the 50 rows data. Why? So that's why on that place the GraphQL come and he will reduce the memory and he make the efficient way. What he will do, he will get only that three parts and he will ignore the other ones.
Okay. And how you will decide in Next.js, like you are going to use the context API or Redux?
Okay, so if we will go with we have the both option. First of all, the context API and the Redux both have a separate methods because if we are talking about the prop stealing, then definitely the context API will become. But if we will talk about the state management, then the Redux will come. But if we are talking about which we need to use, definitely if we have a large project and scalable project, then there will be a lot of states. It's not just a prop stealing. So we will go with the Redux. But in the same case, we have a small project and not a scalable project. We don't need to manage a lot of states and all these things. Then definitely I'm just avoiding the prop stealing. Then I will use the context API.
Okay. Uh, can you explain the difference, like when we avoid the hooks in Next.js, like in the React.js we use the different hooks, then in Next.js, like server-side rendering or client-side rendering, when we avoid the to use the hooks and we use other parameters, and what are those parameters?
Sorry, I don't get your question. Why we avoid hooks?
Yeah, for example, I don't want to use state or use effect hooks, then how we will deal in Next.js?
Okay, so actually, if we are talking about the server-side rendering and client-side rendering, this scenario sometimes come like I am working with the client-side component or a server-side component. Then sometime he will not allow to use the hooks. So we need what we need to do. We need to do some custom things, some custom stuff memories to avoid the state and be a normal. Otherwise, we will pass some props and we avoid the hooks by this method.
Okay, then what is the difference between the get static props and get server-side props in Next.js?
Okay, so if we are talking about the get static props and get server side props, these are two functions basically, which we are using in our app routing. For example, in app routing, we have a file. There was a two files, like one is the main our server side file, and one is the our component side file. So what we will do, we will make an API call, then that will be called, which will be called dynamic, which will be changed dynamically. Then we will use server side rendering. If we need some static data, we need to go with the static data, which we don't need to change that. Then we will go with the for the static one.
Okay. Okay, the next question is like, how do you manage routing in Next.js, and what are the some best practice for building scalable application?
Okay, so for if I am talking about the routing, then definitely I will use the routing which is by default in Next.js. I will follow these rules for routing,
Okay. And
like app routing and page routing. The choice will be there, and I will use, and definitely I will go with the by default one because this will be more efficient and this will be more reliable.
okay, then what are the best practices for building a scalable application in Next.js? Like when you are starting the application from the scratch, what thing you will like keep in your mind to create a Next.js application about to the structure and the other?
Sorry, your voice was cut down, but what I get is the best practice for the scalable application in Next.js, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we need to decide the routing that I will use the app routing or I need to use the page routing. Then definitely I will go for the app routing, for the scalable one. So it's less bundle size, so I will use this one. And if I need to change the component, then I will definitely change the components from the client side component, because there will be a lot of things, a lot of states we need to manage all these things. So I will go with the client components. These two things we need to decide first. Then we need to use the implementation. We need to implementation API roles, or we can use also backend layers for the APIs.
Okay.
And one more thing, which you already mentioned, we will use ISR for this one to make this scalable, and some caching strategy.
Okay. And also in Next.js we use like get initial probes. Can you please tell me like get initial probes is best for the server side rendering or the client side rendering? Or
Sorry,
or
again, you
or or simply we can say like when we need to use a get initial probes.
your voice is not clear to me. But what I get your question is, what is initial props, and it is good.
Get initial probes. What is get initial
Yeah,
probe?
get initial props is good or not, right?
No, I am saying when we need to use get initial probe in React.js.
Okay, so if we will talk simply about the use, then we are using for the lifecycle method to fetch the data before the rendering a page.
Can you give an example like in which scenario we will use server side and which scenario we will use client side rendering?
Okay, so for example, I have a page.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so first of all, I'm giving an example. We have a page, for example, a simply page. We can say the page. So what I will do, I will simply call the get initial probes by the page, and we will pass a variable, and then I will call the API, and we will get the response of that initial probes.
Okay. And how do you handle build optimization in Next.js? Like what tool and strategy do you use to ensure a smart and efficient build?
I think I already mentioned in scalable app.
No, I'm asking about how we can optimize build optimization in Next.js, not about the application optimization. I am asking about the build, like how we can make our build more optimized.
Oh, okay, sorry, my bad. So for the build optimization, we will use static generation. We will use some static probes, we will use some SSR, and yeah, we will split the code definitely, and some dynamic imports because Next.js giving us a dynamic imports. We will use that one for build our optimization, and we will use image tag which is built in the, which is by default from the Next.js. We will use that one, and these things we will use for the build efficient build.
Okay, fine. And how you can mix of static and dynamic content in the same Next.js application.
How I will.
Mix the static and dynamic content in same Next.js application, and how you will balance the performance and flexibility of the app.
How I will mix the static and dynamic.
Yeah.
Basically, when I'm using the Next.js, then always we are mixing the static and dynamic in Next.js.
Can you please explain any scenario, like maybe in some component we are just declaring a server side rendering, and some component we are just
Okay.
declaring, yeah,
Uh,
like on which
for
point
that
you will
one, I
mix
will.
up both.
Okay, so when we are creating an application, some part of the page are pre-rendered at build time.
Okay.
That called SSG. So sometime when we are working, then some parts are fetched on demand, like SSR.
Okay.
So these things mix up here.
Okay, can you please tell me like how Next.js handle the virtual DOM?
How virtual DOM next is okay. So for the handling of the virtual DOM, actually we need to understand the complete flow first. In simply, when we are working on any application, then definitely a DOM is created.
Okay.
So on that, when a DOM is created, and we are going on our browser, on the same time a virtual DOM is created which
Okay.
is similar to the DOM.
Okay.
And then when I will make any change, then a copy of virtual DOM will be created. Then a virtual DOM on that part, the virtual DOM, the copy of virtual DOM will be compared by the virtual DOM. Then that specific part will be implemented in the DOM. So we can see the changes are reflected.
Okay. Let me provide one scenario. Can you please tell me in it like you will use the server side rendering, client side rendering, or the static generation rendering? So, for
Sorry,
example,
can you please repeat the question? Scenario about?
yeah, I'm giving a scenario.
Okay. For?
For example, we are building a chat application in Next.js. So,
Uh-huh.
what do you think like the static side generation is the best, or like client side or the server side rendering is the best, and why?
About difference between SSR and
No, no,
CSR?
I'm just asking like when we are like creating a chat application, real time chat application, what
Uh-huh.
what rendering we will use, like client side rendering or server side rendering or other?
Okay, so the question is, the scenario is we are building a chat application,
Yeah.
and what tracking we will use, like SSR or CSR, right?
Yeah. And why?
Okay, so for that case, we will use client-side rendering for that one.
Okay.
And because because in the real-time updates, without reloading the page, we need to use the CSR. And also, when we are using the chat, we are sending message, we are receiving message, then it's lightweight on server, not the heavyweight on the server.
Mm.
And it's also perfect for the dynamic and frequently changes because on the instant basis the messages are sending and receiving. So for that reason we need to make this dynamic, so it's perfect for the dynamic and frequently changing the content.
And why we are not using like the server side rendering? What is the con of it or disadvantage?
Calls about the SSR.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually it's not suitable for the real-time chat. If we will talking specifically about the real-time chat, then it's not suitable to the real-time chat because page refresh is needed for the new messages. For example, I'm sending you a message, then you need to reload the page, then you will receive the page. You will receive the message, otherwise you will not get the message. And then this need a heavy load on server. So because when we are talking about the chat application, then there will be a many of users, so there will be a load on the server, so we will not use that. And it's also slower the CSR for updates.
Okay, when we talk about like the server side rendering, we say like server side rendering fetch the data from the server, right? So it's load the whole HTML page to the browser.
In the server side rendering,
Yeah.
sorry, actually, your voice was breaking. So in the SSR, it's load the whole HTML page or not, right?
Yes.
So yes, it's load the whole HTML page.
And same in the client side rendering.
Actually, yeah, you can say it's load the complete, but in the client side, yeah, you can say that. Because in the client side, I'm little confused because if we are talking about the client side, then definitely this should not be the render the complete HTML page because it's in the thing. So I think this will load only the JS.
Uh, on server side rendering, it's not load the like complete HTML page, but on client
Uh-huh.
side it's render the complete HTML page, because on server side server fetch the data from the server and show the HTML, but it's not a actual HTML from the JS. And once everything is
Okay.
load, then it's like load the whole HTML page. Yeah, that's why it's best suitable for the SEO purpose as well.
Oh, okay, great. So, what I get is in the SSR, HTML file will be not the load, and in CSR, the HTML file will be loaded.
Yeah, fully loaded. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, yeah,
Okay.
it's new for me. Thank.
Okay, and the next question is about like when we're deploying a Next.js application, like what are the best practice for setting up the production environment? For example, we can say environment variable, continuous deployment, and performance optimization. Like how you follow the best practice for production environment.
Okay, so if we are using the Next.js, then what will be the best practice for the production? In which sense?
Like to deploy any server, what are the best practice we need to keep maintain before deploying the Next.js application?
Basically for the Next.js, it's not too much complicated, so we can simply use some variables, like we can use env locals there, and we can deploy, and we can also optimize by the setting and dynamic content, all these stuff which I already mentioned. So yeah, right now these things are in my mind, and if Yeah, so only these things. If you can mention about the specific thing in the deployment time, that what kind of things you are thinking about, then I can uh, give you a better answer. Like for the pipeline, or for the monitoring and logging, and for the security purpose.
Yeah, all the thing what come in your mind you can tell.
For all these things.
Yeah.
Okay, so for all these things, the best practice for this product, I'm sorry, right now this is not in my mind.
Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Okay. Okay.
How do you handle the internationalization in Next.js like I18 and when we need to work with the multiple language?
Int 18, 18, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, this is a package, I18. We can use this and we can create some JSON files with multiple languages. And by the help of I18, we can switch the JSONs and we can switch the languages.
Okay. And we talk about like server side rendering and client side rendering a lot. Can you please give me the example, like as a developer, how we know we need to implement server side rendering and here is the client side rendering with the real time examples?
Actually, I already given you an real-time example of chatbot, I think. So,
Yeah,
can you
chat
specify?
integration is the like client side was the good example. And what can be the example for the server side rendering?
Uh, for the server side, same if we will talk about the chat, then in the server side, I already mentioned in the cons that I will not use that. So in the cons, if we will talk again, then definitely we need to refresh the page and all these kind of stuff which I already mentioned. So for the chatbot, we will not use that one.
Okay, let me simplify more for you. For example, if we have an application and if the data is frequently changing, then what we will be use, like client side rendering or the server side rendering?
If we have a application and continuously the data is changing like in chatbot, then what we will do, right?
Yeah. And what we will do if the data is not frequently changing, for example some blog sites or news sites, uh, which may be not change like every time, maybe after some day or some hours, then what we will use, like client side rendering or the server side rendering?
Okay, so this is the same scenario, I think, because I already gave you an example, so I need to repeat here. For the chatbot, for the chatbot, as I mentioned, for, the CSR and the SSR, we need to use the CSR for the static ones and for the dynamic management and for the runtime and for the optimization. But on the other hand, we will not use the SSR because due to the page reloading, due to the not fetching the data, due to the a lot of the users using at the same time, there will be a load. So SSR will not manage this. So we will not use the SSR. We will use the CSR. All this stuff.
Okay, one more scenario, like sometime we can have some scenario, for example, data not change frequently but after some time as like a background job, then what we will use in React.js, like server side rendering, client side rendering, I or ISR, or the static side generation, if the data is
Uh,
changing not changing frequently but as like a background tasking, we need to fetch the data, then what we will do, what Next.js
uh,
provide for this one?
okay, so if data is not changing frequently,
Then
then what we will do?
yeah, basically we want to cache the data before requesting the user, right? So it's like optimize the performance of the application as well. Like when user will request, we quickly provide the data. We don't need to call the data on the backend side, so it's render again and again on the background side.
Okay, so if data doesn't changing frequently, then definitely I will use static SSG with the optional ISR.
Okay.
Because SSR is an alternative of SEO important, but CSR is necessary because the content doesn't require frequently client-side updates.
But I guess the best choice is like to use ISR. Like ISR provide the functionality in React.js in Next.js. Like we can fetch the data on the background side. Like when data is update after some time, after some day, then we will call our APIs with ISR, and ISR will fetch the data, and whenever the client will request, it will send the data back to the client and optimize the performance of the Next.js application.
Exactly. I totally agree with you, but I think you don't clearly hear my answer. If you record it, then you can
Okay,
see there.
you
I'm
can repeat.
mentioning,
Yeah.
I'm mentioning we will use SSG with the optional SISR.
Okay. Okay, fine. Then perfect. I was thinking like you are saying client side rendering is the best choice for this one.
No, no, no. I am not talking about the client side. I am talking about SSG with optional ISR.
Okay, okay, then totally fine.